Good morning and welcome to today's session on making homes that work. I'd like to begin today by thanking the New York Office for People with Developmental Disabilities for making these 4 webinar sessions available. In particular, I want to thank Lucinda Grant Griffin, who is the Director of the Office of Home and Community Living for the state of New York, for her support on this very important project. Neither the state of New York nor Creative Housing Solutions receive compensation in any way for those materials that are presented or mentioned in this presentation. So the main values that we bring to this project have to do with creating opportunity. And we're looking for physical environments that provide a significant component to allowing people to live the kind of lives they want to live, to be able to make the choices that they want to make. So supportive environments really create opportunities for people to increase their independence and the amount of choice that they have. They enable people to do the things that they want to do. They give you control and build your capacities. They keep you safe and they reduce stress and enable you to use the environment in a way that satisfies you. So those are the 4 goals that we're looking to achieve as we think about these environmental modifications. And I think it's important to note that the environment is just one component of giving people the kinds of controls in their lives that we want to achieve, and that it should always be part of an overall strategy that supports people living the kind of lives that they want. And this includes helping people with improvement in their communication skills and building the capacities to live the lives that they want to live. So there are 4 key principles that you're going to hear repeated today a number of times, and I hope if you leave this session with nothing other than remembering these and believing that they are true, and I'm going to try to convince you of that through today's session. So people enter into relationships with their environment for better or worse. I think oftentimes we think that physical environments are very neutral and we just apply ourselves to them, and that somehow we walk around with this sort of internal understanding of how that actually works. But environments really aren't neutral, and you enter into a relationship with them for better or worse. And by that I mean they can actually control your choices. They can control how much opportunity you have. And for people with autism spectrum disorder in particular, they're not so much going to create their environments as they are going to react to those environments. So part of what we want to understand is, how do you create environments where the relationship for people with autism spectrum disorder in particular are better relationships? The difference between a problem behavior and a preferred activity are consequences. So I've told the story often about Anna, who loved water, and Anna would spend hours every day in the bathroom engaging with water. It was a really important thing to her. It calmed her. It enabled her to enjoy the life that she wanted, played with water, spilled it, but the problem was it messed up the bathroom. So over time, the bathroom floor rotted out 2 or 3 times and had to be replaced. Mom was constantly doing loads of towels to keep up. So when you looked at that situation, you could say that Anna, being in the bathroom playing with water, was a problem behavior. But as you unwrap it, what was really the problem? The problem wasn't so much that Anna was playing with water. The problem was that the bathroom couldn't put up with Anna playing with water. So when you made the modification to the bathroom and you put in a floor drain and you tiled the whole bathroom, then Anna could do the thing that she really wanted to do, and there was no damage. There was no damage to the bathroom. The stress of Mom was reduced. So when you think about a problem behavior, sometimes it's unwrapping it and getting down to what is really the issue, and oftentimes it's an issue of the environment not working in a way that makes sense for that person. You cannot fix a problem behavior in a broken environment. Once environments become broken, stress goes up in the house, and pretty soon the whole situation begins to deteriorate. And it's really difficult to provide opportunity for people to live the kind of lives they want if their bathrooms are broken or the windows are broken in the house. So you have to address those damaged spaces in a home first, because they also create a whole attitude about how the home feels. And when homes start to feel not like homes anymore and they lose that sense of comfort, the stress level goes up for everybody. And if the environment doesn't work, it's not the person's fault. And I think we see this real clearly when we look at individuals with with physical disabilities. So if we see a person in a wheelchair approach a staircase we don't expect that that person is going to go up that staircase. And we don't blame that person for not being able to do it. We recognize that there's an environmental modification that has to happen to make it possible for that person to use the staircase. Well, similarly, environmental modifications that support people with various kinds of cognitive disabilities to use their environments in a way that works for them and makes sense for them can have as profound an effect as building a ramp. So in Anna's case, making that bathroom work for Anna was as important and was as life-changing as creating a ramp for a person who uses a wheelchair. So these are the 4 principles. You'll hear them illustrated today as we go through the slide presentation. So just imagine that you went to Home Depot and you were walking down the aisles of Home Depot and you looked up and there was an aisle there that said autism and assistive technology. So what are some of the things that you might find in such an aisle at Home Depot? You might find information about glass and about windows. You might find information about incontinence. You might find information about doors or locks. So the kinds of things that I'm talking about today, they're really not rocket science. They're very pragmatic, and most of the solutions you can find at Home Depot. The important thing that I want to try to transmit today is it's about thinking creatively, and it's also about understanding the important role of the physical environment in making those things happen. So broken windows. It's one of the most common things that we find. People that will test the strength of materials, oftentimes windows will get broken, sometimes deliberately, sometimes accidentally. But it's a big problem because it not only is it a life, health, and safety issue, but it becomes an issue where the house starts to look bad. And very often people find various solutions to dealing with the broken windows, screwing plywood up, as you can see in this photograph. But it's certainly something that has to be addressed first and foremost. When anytime you're looking at an assessment of a situation, what are the things that are potentially presenting life, health, and safety issues? Are people going to get hurt? Because when you ask families, you say, what's the thing that you most worry about with your son or daughter? And it is that they're going to hurt themselves, they're going to hurt someone else. And this kind of situation where glass can get broken and a person can get cut is just such a circumstance. So tempered glass is a solution to this problem. It's a solution that we prefer. It's 4 times stronger than regular glass. In most cases, you can replace the glazing in a window. So when you think about a window, you have the sash of the window, and then inside of that, you have the glass. In most cases, you can remove traditional glass and replace it with tempered glass. It's about 30% more than regular window glass. And if it does get broken, it just breaks into thousands of little tiny square cubes that are not going to hurt you. It's important when you change the glass, if the kind of impact that's happening, that's breaking the window, is pretty severe, that the window itself be installed very firmly and very solidly so that it doesn't end up completely out of the frame. So oftentimes people look at alternatives, and if you go and Google non-breakable windows, most of the time what's going to come up are various kinds of plexiglasses, and they're under various names: Lexan, Ocgan. There's a whole bunch of different kinds of plastic, polycarbonate materials that are out there for window glass. The problem with them is they don't look very good, and if you bang on them at all, they're sort of almost kind of thundery. They have a high coefficient of expansion, so when you put them in regular frame, they don't want to sit there very well, so they will get loose. And when you clean them, they scratch. So very quickly, a plexiglass window covering or replacing glass with plexiglass really does look bad, and we don't generally recommend it. There are safety films out there, so if the occasion when a person's going to test the window or hit the window isn't so determined, it's kind of a little bit of frustration and it's a single bang, they have safety films that you can put on the window that are squeegeed on, and the glass will sort of hang there if it does get broken, and it increases the strength of the glass about 3 times. So it's a pretty economical alternative. So this is a person-centered bedroom, and in all of our work, we have seen patterns and we see circumstances that repeat themselves for various individuals that make sense. So we kind of have the 6 most common things that we do in over 1,500 projects in people's homes experiencing autism of one sort or another. And always they need to be tweaked to the individual. They need to respond to what the individual needs and how they live their lives. And over the years, we came to find out how important color is. And oftentimes, color can really shift the conversation. In this particular bedroom, this was a person that had an amazing love of the color orange. And why, we never did figure it out. But one of the things that he would do is he would shred cloth. But they figured out that he wouldn't shred things that were orange. So when we did his room, we used orange extensively. So it's carpeting, draperies, wall colors, and so forth were all orange. He spent a lot of time on the floor. And he moved around down there, very, very flexible. So you saw we dropped the window heights all the way down, tempered glass windows throughout. He would pull things down. Even though he wouldn't shred the cloth, he would oftentimes pull the blinds off. So these were breakaway blinds, fiberglass doors. So this is what we would describe as a very durable room, or what we would term a hardened room. And it would put up with the kinds of testing that Edson would often do in the room. So thinking about what was it that Edson needed in particular and creating a room that made sense for him and worked has to be part of the thinking about everyone that you do a project for. We can't keep blinds or curtains on our house. So one of the most common things that we encounter, little Venetian blinds get crunched up very easily. They have cords that hang down. Traditional curtains, pretty easy to pull off the wall. And I go into many homes where over time, as you can see here, there are sort of layers of window coverings that have ended up being in place, from the Venetian blind to the curtain, and then ultimately you'll see blankets and sheets literally tacked up on the wall. And that's part of what I talk about when you start to see those sorts of situations. The home starts losing a certain quality. And it's like people don't want to come and visit. And it just gets this sense. And everybody in the home is really affected by those kinds of situations. Well, some of the strategies for breakaway curtains, a very simple one here at the bottom of the screen is a Velcro loop. So you simply install a curtain rod, you stitch Velcro on the inside of the curtain, you loop it up over the curtain rod, put it together, curtain gets pulled down, it's real easy to put it back up, reconnect the Velcro, and there it is. We've used them successfully on shower curtains as well. It's pretty economical to do, and it can look nice. And it's just simple. The thing that you have to have is you have to have a very durable rod, so it has to be really well secured to the framing so that it'll put up with the hard tug on the curtain. There are safe snap draperies, so there's a little plastic button, and the Travis rod hook snaps into the button. And if you pull on the curtain, it pops off. We used this at Ronnie's house, and whenever that would happen, Ronnie's dad would get Ronnie, and Ronnie come over, and he'd help put at least the first 1 or 2 snaps back on, and then you could reconnect the curtain. So the rod, once it's solidly attached, will put up with the curtain being pulled free. And then in bathroom situations, you have cubicle tracks with that same kind of breakaway capacity. We love to put the blinds inside of the windows if we can get away with it. Originally, this blind between the glass was an exclusive patent by Pella Windows, and now that patent has expired, so you can actually get these blind situations in many, many different windows. Anderson makes a really nice internal blind, and it works with the tempered glass situation that we're talking about. Now all your cords and all of the problems that come with blinds are in between the panes of glass, and it's very, very nice, and they have a really good operating mechanism. Things stay clean and the blinds look good. You cannot fix a problem behavior in a broken environment. So when environments start to fall apart and they begin to deteriorate, it's just holes in the walls and the outdoor areas, the furniture gets broken down, you need things that are going to put up with that kind of unintentional use. And if you don't fix that situation, it's really difficult to create different opportunities and to help those kind of behaviors be extinguished. More self-control should result in more opportunity. And as I said at the beginning of this, what the physical environment does is it seeds into the circumstance opportunities for people to exercise control, opportunity for people to use their environments in a way that makes sense and works for them. And it's important that as that capacity increases, as people's skills levels develop, as they're able to better communicate what they want and need, that the environment is there to continue to respond to that. So the whole goal is to create opportunities for people to use their environments appropriately and safely. So it's not enough to just say, oh, you know, I solved the problem with the refrigerator because I put a chain around the refrigerator. Or I solved the problem with the refrigerator because I put a lock on the refrigerator. So there may be a time when that might be necessary in a very short period of time. But the goal is to create an environment where over time we don't need those locks anymore. We don't need those restrictions anymore because people have learned to use them in a way that makes sense for them. If people never have any freedom, how do they learn to exercise freedom appropriately? In 2000, I did a number of projects in Palm Springs, and the developer that I was working with down there, he asked me that question as we were working on the house. He said, you know, people, if they've never had any freedom, how do we just imagine that suddenly they know how to do it? That suddenly they know how to make choices? It's like if they haven't had that opportunity to practice that, if they've lived in situations where all of the decisions have been made by someone else, all the choices have been controlled by someone else, and then we're going to suddenly say, oh, well, you have complete freedom. And we're surprised that they might walk out in the middle of the street, or they might not know how to use things, that it takes some time to develop those capacities and those opportunities. So a big part of what we think about is, you know, access to clothes. You know individuals that if they had total freedom of their clothes, they would go in and put on all their clothes. And they would just keep putting them on. So one solution to that is, well, we can just put a door on there and we can close the door and lock the door and you don't give access to the clothes. That's one way to proceed. Another way is to put the clothes that they need that day accessible to them so that they begin to practice that situation. Every day they go and they select the clothes and they put those clothes on. And then over time we get to a place where they don't need the door anymore. They don't need that restriction anymore because they have a situation where the opportunity exists for them to have total access and freedom to use their clothes in the way that they want. This is what we call the hard wall system. So individuals that frequently test the strength of materials will kick holes in the wall, will hit the wall with their head. That kind of damage is really difficult to attend to in conventional housing development. So if you go to your house and you look at your wall, the wall is generally framed with wood every 16 inches or every 2 foot, and then there's half-inch sheetrock that's applied to the wall. Well, the surface strength of sheetrock in that situation is 65 pounds per square inch. You could actually dig a hole in that sheetrock with a pencil. And if you hit it real hard and you don't hit the framing, you'll break a hole in it. So, and once holes get started, you know, I've often found it's like people are actually trying to make that better, and they keep working at it, and the hole just keeps getting bigger and bigger, and there just ends up being more and more of them. And I've gone into houses and people say, well, you know, Carl will break 60 holes a week in the walls. And so the whole place is just a mess. So this is a situation, this was Ronnie, once again, who really did test the strength of materials in a very aggressive way. But this is a room that Ronnie really couldn't do any damage to this wall. And when I first worked with Ronnie, his dad would literally be right at Ronnie's elbow all the time, because wherever Ronnie went in the house, things got broken unless somebody was right there with him. And the day we opened up this addition for Ronnie went into the addition, you could hear him in there testing everything in that space. And he came out and he got his dad, and he brought his dad in there, and he tested everything in the space because there was nothing in that space that Ronnie could break. And so for the first time in years, it set his dad free, but the important thing was it set Ronnie free. It set Ronnie free to live in a space that he wasn't going to damage, and he didn't have to have somebody at his elbow all the time. And at the end of the day, it looks nice. I mean, you cannot actually tell that those are tempered glass windows or breakaway curtains or that there's plywood behind the sheetrock. It looks like your house or my house, and that is a great goal in the work that we do. That it needs to be beautiful, it needs to be practical, and it needs to be unbreakable. So there you're looking at the Velcro curtains that we talked about that are breakaway. The walls are reinforced with plywood, wainscot. The cabinetry there is all solid wood with full extension drawer guides. It can't be taken out. The closet rod can't be removed. It has fiberglass doors. It is a very, very, very durable room that would put up with just about anything that got thrown in it or any place that it was hit or kicked in frustration. But at the end of the day, it looks nice. It looks nice. Kyle can pick Kevlar paint off a wall. So we've been doing this for a long time, and we've developed some strategies and some techniques that have worked. And when you get folks that have an obsessive compulsive behavior of picking at things, we've developed a wall system that starts off with what's called MDF, medium density fiber overlay, very, very dense plywood composition material. And then we apply to that a Kevlar reinforced paint. So you know Kevlar from bulletproof vests. And when you put Kevlar in paint, you can take a key and scratch it and it won't come off. Kyle can take it off with his fingers. Kyle is pretty amazing in terms of his capacity to pick. So we put this wall together and we sold the idea that we can put this Kevlar reinforced paint and this MDF plywood surface in Kyle's room and he won't be able to hurt it. Well, he proved us wrong. So we had to go back and come up with a different system. And so there we used reinforced plastic panels, and once the edges of the panels were totally sealed, it became an unpickable wall. So part of what it is that, are you going to get it right the first time? And you may have to go back and do it again. You may have to improve the situation. And that's again, that sort of flexibility and looking for products and methods and materials that work in a situation. So one of the most common irritants, one of the most difficult things for a lot of folks that I work with ASD to deal with is sound. And it tends to be a particular stimulation that is oftentimes most upsetting. It's the thing we most need to control. So we've spent a lot of time looking at soundproofing systems, sound resilience systems, both for the individual who may be overly sensitive to sound coming from outside of the environment or sound that he's generating inside of the environment. So soundproofing is really an important thing. And you can go and Google acoustic panels and acoustic separations, and technology is moving so quickly now that there's new products being developed all the time that actually make it easier and easier to do soundproofing. And as you see the trend of more and more folks living closer together, cities becoming re-urbanized, you see that it's going to become more and more important for all of us to be able to have that kind of quiet to live our lives. So this is a pretty conventional solid soundboard system, high density fiberglass system, reasonably economical, pretty available, works great for over applying on an existing wall system where there's not testing going on, but you really need to quiet the room down. So a lot of the work that I did over this 30 years in my career was moving people from institutional settings back into community. And oftentimes I would find that these individuals needed more environmental modifications than less. And one of the people I worked with here in Oregon a number of years ago talked about, wouldn't it be wonderful we could have soft walls? And you don't really think about walls in that way. So you see all this energy that we put into creating hard wall situations. But what about situations where people might bang their heads or there might be seizures involved? So could we think about a way of softening a wall that would allow that wall to continue to be very cleanable? And people in particular that we were working with had a lot of self-injurious kinds of behaviors, and it would actually protect them a little bit. So we came up with a whole system where we framed the wall with a plywood reinforcement backing and then added a 1/2 inch of closed cell foam and then put over top of that a PVC layer. So you ended up with a wall that you actually couldn't tell the difference between it and a regular wall, but if you pushed on it or bumped it, it was actually a soft wall. This is a soft tub. This project we did in Kern County. And once again, if you have individuals that may have seizures, may flop around a lot, they're going to get bruised up in regular tubs because regular tubs are hard, cast iron, even the ones that are fiberglass, they're very, very easy for a person to get bruised or hurt in that tub. So it ends up with most kinds of situations, somebody's with them, having to hold them, having to be part of that tubbing experience. So wouldn't it be better if a person could be safe in the tub, not get injured in the tub, and be freer to take that bath alone, to have that bath be working for them? And so actually Kohler makes this tub, has a soft bottom in it, the sides are padded, it's a little bit like our soft wall. Also pretty wonderful because when you step down in it, it almost conforms to your foot, and it starts out as a pretty warm situation. So these are other soft wall details that we developed over time. Built-in furniture is sometimes a really good idea. You can pad the furniture really well. It's very secure. It doesn't get pushed around. If you have to have, a person-to-person contact situation around the table is really solid. You can really work within that situation, and it creates that soft world that also is a quieting world. So we oftentimes create spaces where the idea is that can we take some of that stimulation that might be irritating, it might start to push people, into sort of over the top, if you will, and can we control those stimuli that are most adversive to the person and allow a situation where things can calm down and people can relax. More details around sound separations. If you think about a sound wave, it passes through anything that is conductive. So it will follow a piece of wood, through a nail, and out. And actually yesterday we were looking at some of the newest technology around soundproofing, and there was a new product out there called green glue. And green glue transfers the energy vibration of sound to heat and is a quieting system. So every day the technology continues to move forward, and there are more and more strategies for doing the kind of soundproofing that is very important. Acoustic gasket tape, this is real easy to apply. It's pretty economical. It can go on a system that already exists, and you can simply apply a second layer of sheetrock or a second layer of paneling. And the acoustic tape does that same kind of separation of the sound wave, doesn't allow it to penetrate all the way through. These are various kinds of drywall products. I've talked about sheetrock, regular sheetrock only having 65 pounds per square inch of tensile strength. You can get high impact sheetrock that jumps that immediately up to 225 pounds. At 225 pounds, you're going to have to, it will put up with a punch. It may still not put up with a full kick, but it's much, much stronger than regular sheetrock. And then you have soundboard sheetrocks that, once again, really help reduce sound. So if we're looking at people that are potentially going to live in apartment settings, as more and more true community integration happens and people are living in their own apartments, they may have set-asides and developments, applying some of these kinds of materials makes it easier for them to get along. And the better a building is designed to help individuals live the way they want, actually the easier it is for people to live together. And so a lot of this soundproofing and separation really helps that happen. Slamming doors. When Lucy goes off, doors get slammed. When my daughter gets mad, doors get slammed. Sometimes I can remember slamming doors myself. But for some folks, slamming doors is more than just a momentary expression of frustration. It's something that happens pretty frequently, as was the case with Lucy. So, the thing about it is it's loud noise, disturbs other people in the house. Over time, it damages the door. So you can start off with simple things like foam tape on the door, little rubber bumpers on the door, and begin to quiet the door down. We like fiberglass doors, and I'll talk about that here in just a second. If you're handy yourself or you know somebody that is, this is a really simple system that we developed that you can go to like a Home Depot and you can buy an aluminum weather stripping shoe. And it's a little U-shaped piece that you can see there that goes around the bottom of the door. So it just slips up on the bottom of the door. And depending on how high or low you slip that on the door, you can create a resistance on the floor. So then we take the rubber part out of the bottom of the door and we put in it a little piece of wood, and then we take some felt and wrap it around the piece of wood. So what we've done is we've created this little skid on the bottom of the door. And if you bring that little skid down so that it just barely touches the carpet, you really can't slam the door. You have to actually push the door through its full range and open it back up. Very economical, works very well. And oftentimes, once the habit of slamming the door, or I can't tell you the number of times at Ronnie's house, does Ronnie go around and continue to bang on the walls now? Not very much anymore, because there's no sort of reaction to that. There's no reaction from his mom and dad. There's no reaction. The wall isn't broken. So sometimes I think, geez, if we could just set them up temporarily and they couldn't get damaged, then maybe they don't do it anymore. But this is a really economical solution to some door slamming. In cases where it's more of a kind of obsessive compulsive kind of a situation, we really like fiberglass doors and what are called knockdown metal frames. And if you're not familiar with the construction industry, the frame of a door is typically made out of wood, but they also make them out of metal. and they come in parts, and they're very, very strong. Home Depot stocks them. Lots of different Lowe's. There are lots of places that stock those door frames. And they're easy to replace the existing frame. They wrap around the sheetrock, and then you nail them in place, and then add a fiberglass door. The fiberglass doors are very light. They're extremely strong. The finishes are very durable on them because it's into the fiberglass itself, so it's not the chip paint situation. And when you put that combination together, when you go to slam a fiberglass door, the wind resistance on the door is fairly extreme. So by the time it gets to the metal frame, which is also totally sealed, it's almost like boom, rather than bang, because actually that air is really slowing the door down pretty significantly before it gets to the jamb. We love pocket doors. Pocket doors are really hard to slam. There's no swing involved in the pocket door, so you don't have to organize furniture on the other side to stay out of the way of a swing door. They're really easy to use. The key is you got to use good hardware. So when I try to sell pocket doors to people, they go, oh, I don't do pocket doors. And it's because they think about the cupboards and their closets that have fallen apart over the years. But here Johnson makes an incredible hardware, as do some other manufacturers that don't come off the tracks and are really quite remarkable hardware. This is a single pocket door. We arrange them in a way so that when the door is in the full open position, there's still 5 inches of the door that remain out of the frame itself. So there's a place you can put a handle there. You're not going to get your hand pinched into the door. You can get a full width door opening by allowing the door to go all the way back. So you're just not fighting the door. And particularly my friends who use wheelchairs to get around love them. Because if you think about a swing door, it's always in the way. You've either, you got to get out of the way to open it, or you got to go back to fetch it. And in this case, the door simply slides out of the way. So there's single pocket door assemblies. And then if you don't want to spend the time, or you can't deal with the expense of putting the pocket door in the wall, there is a method where you can actually surface mount the door on the outside with a guide on the bottom. So you can get the advantage of a pocket door in a conventional opening that you don't have to actually cut the wall, and you're able to slide the door open. And it's the same kind of advantages of pocket door without the expense of necessarily having to put it inside of the wall. Remember when I'm talking about the difference between a problem behavior and a preferred activity, or the consequences. This was Josh's house in California, and Josh thought he was a dolphin, and he would tell you that. And so when he would take a bath, he would fill the bathtub up, and then he would stand on the upper edge of the bathtub, and he would slide down into the tub and splash the water out of the tub. And he was a pretty big guy, and he would stop himself when he got to the end of the tub with his legs. And over time, as you can imagine, a fiberglass tub was really not meant to put up with that. So the tub got broken, and he wasn't able to use it in that way anymore. He could only use the shower, and somebody had to be with him all the time. But what did he really love to do? He really loved to play dolphin in that bathtub. And so you needed to change what he wanted to do. I mean, was the problem that he wanted to splash and have that sensation of sliding down that tub? I don't think that was the problem. The problem was he broke the tub and flooded the bathroom. Floor drains. Don't do bathrooms without them. If I am called into projects, the first thing that I recommend that people do is install a floor drain in the bathroom. It is the thing that I think reduces the most amount of stress in the bathroom. In almost all of our lives, tubs and toilets overflow at some point in time. And when that happens, it is a big problem. It makes a mess. It gets up into the sheetrock. It ends up costing a lot of money. You got to bring in professional cleaners to deal with it, or it can go down the drain. So I think if there's one thing that I strongly suggest in almost every project when it comes to bathroom use, is to put in a floor drain. Floor drains can also be installed in vinyl floors, and you have situations where water play or incontinence may want you to have the capacity to clean those floors easily, and you can put a floor drain in vinyl. It's much more economical. You don't have to necessarily slope the whole floor. The critical thing is, if you're going to do that, you need what they call cove the vinyl, so that the vinyl actually turns up the wall and creates like a tub type situation, so that moisture or water or whatever doesn't end up against the sheetrock and get drawn up into the sheetrock. Why make a wet room? And it's for all of these reasons, and it's once again back to that several ideas, which is, letting people do the things that satisfy them. I think sometimes we don't ask the question often enough, what makes Anna really happy? And one of the things that made Anna really happy was that bathroom. And it became, in many cases, an intervention to what might have escalated into a crisis situation, because Anna could go and do something that she wanted to do. She could be safe there. It could be freeing for her. So for all of these reasons, wet rooms make sense. Reduces stress, prevents damage to the home, greater sense of independence. So those very early principles that we talked about all can be satisfied in a wet room. And there's fun things to do. And these are amazing new interactive devices that are possible to have a great time in your bathroom. And I've done some really nice projects for physicians, and oftentimes they really are into these kind of wonderful little water toys. So I'm not sure whether they may be slightly on the spectrum, or certainly they've helped generate a whole number of products that our friends really enjoy. Slips and falls, most common injuries in housing is that. So if you're looking at doing floors in bathrooms, floors any place, you want to keep that in mind. Tiles in bathrooms want to be 2x2 or smaller. And this radiant heat system, in a regular bathroom, the radiant heat system costs about $600. And that'd give you a 5x7 bathroom. There's a little thermostat on the wall, and it's a heat mat, an electric heat mat, and it warms the tile. And there's a number of things about it that we really like. Number one, it dries the floor out. Number two, when you walk into a place where the floor is warm, everything about it is good. It makes you feel good. And it's really where you want the heat. And all too often we live in worlds where all the heat is coming at our heads. It tends to relax folks. And once the floor is wet, very often there are other things to do. We're moving on to the next chore, we're moving on to the next task. We need to get dressed, we need to get on the way. Who's got time to go back and mop up the bathroom floor with the residual water that might be there? So behind the toilet, behind the sink, accumulates there, and pretty soon there starts to be a little bit of mold. This radiant floor heat will dry that situation out, eliminate a lot of the slipping and falling hazards, and it's pretty economical to install. Again, if you have significant issues related to the bathroom use, really a nice tech strategy to be able to shut the bathroom water off, maintain full use of the water elsewhere in the building, and then take care of the problem that you might have in the bathroom. Pretty easy to install if you're thinking out ahead, particularly if you're doing new construction, but it's also easy to cut into conventional construction. Again, today, because plumbing parts are so much easier to use. There's a whole line of what they call PEX plumbing, which has fittings that just any one of us don't have to be able to solder or glue. We can simply cut the pipe off, slip the shark bite on, put the piece of pipe in there, and away we go. So, it's getting easier and easier for people to do things themselves, and the technology is there. Toilets and toilet stuffing, another really common behavior that we encounter. This particular toilet is made by American Standard, and you can go on their website and look at this toilet. And they have this little kid standing there, and he's got this 5-gallon bucket full of golf balls. And the video says, if you have one of these, and he pours the golf balls down the toilet, it says you need one of these. So it has a very large throat, it's very straight. So this toilet will withstand really significant amount of foreign objects being put in and flushed. So we really like in-the-wall tank toilets, where the toilet itself hangs on the wall. All of the mechanisms for the toilets are inside the wall. Gabre is actually the world's largest toilet manufacturer. And you go to Europe, most places do this, and you're seeing more and more of these show up all over the place. In fact, I read an article in the New York Times just the day before yesterday talking about the new generation of toilets, and it is in fact these wall-mounted toilets. So it takes all of that kind of tank problem and gets it out of the way. Tanks want to sweat when the temperature changes. That's where all the mechanisms and the chain is always getting hooked in there, and you got to lift it up and put the flapper on it. Keeping the lid intact can sometimes be difficult. So in this case, all of that stuff lives inside of the wall. If you're supporting somebody that needs assistance coming on or off the toilet, suddenly you can get your toes and get your hips in the right place to make that happen. It's really easy to mop up underneath of the toilet. So there's just many things about these kind of in-the-wall toilets that have great advantage. So This is a toilet seat. This particular one is made by Toto, and you take the regular toilet seat off and you put this toilet seat on and you hook it up to the plumbing of the toilet and you bring power to it, and what it has is it has a warm water wash, has a little fan that comes on, and a blow dry. And it is an amazingly liberating thing for someone that has had to have that kind of assistance using the toilet all the time. My friend Emery, who for 45 years had to have assistance using the toilet, when we put this in, it was like the biggest smile I ever saw, because now he could do it himself. And because Emery couldn't do anything with his hands, we actually ended up mounting the controller to the floor, and he could operate it with his foot. These things run about $600, and they can really revolutionize a person's independence in terms of using the toilet. If the environment doesn't work, it's not the person's fault. This was a strategy for a young man who had an absolute aversion to using the toilet. And this had happened, over a long period of time. But it was an important thing. It's one of those skills that set people free. Whenever you're able to use the toilet appropriately, suddenly there's not the need for the diapers. It just allows easier access to community. There's a whole bunch of reasons why toileting is so important, and successful toileting for folks. So one of the strategies that we developed, along with a very, well-organized system of scheduling and supporting use of the toilet, was we developed a toilet where when you sat down on the toilet, it would turn on a television set and play this man's favorite video. And so when you got up, the video went off. So one of the first goals was to actually get him comfortable with coming in and sitting down on the toilet. And then over time, things began to happen. And now, 5 years out, this toilet is used in a conventional way, and actually the television set is gone. So this is back to that principle that I talked about right at the beginning. It's like creating opportunity, putting the physical environment in a way that does that, so that ultimately people can exercise control, can use the things the way they want to use them. This is a really extreme toilet stuffing situation, and this young man could get out of his underwear or get a towel or get a shirt and get it down the toilet and start flushing that toilet in 10 seconds. And he would just keep flushing it until the bathroom was flooded. So we put in a controller behind the toilet, so when you push the button that flushes the Gabbray toilet, it actually just sent a little shot of air into this controller. And that controller would flush the toilet once. And then there was a device that would not allow the toilet tank to refill for however long you set the device. And we've built a number of these, and over the years we've done a scientific study of the attention span of a toilet stuffer. And we figured out that it's 45 seconds. That if that toilet won't flush, no matter how many times I push the button for 45 seconds, I leave the room. And then the toilet can refill. Automatic faucets, again, not having the issue of controls that need to be adjusted. These can be worked by either just putting your hand under it. This particular model actually is powered up by the water the power that's generated by the water running through the pipe. They're battery-operated varieties. It's just options to look at depending on an individual's circumstance. So as you're person-centered planning someone's bathroom, this may make sense for them. And there is the technology out there. And because this has become so universalized, almost every faucet in every airport or bus depot is like this, that technology is now available, and it's much more economical than it used to be. Incontinence is, might be another aisle sign at the Home Depot store, and it happens anywhere, and it can be a really significant issue. It's a great stressor very often for families, the cleanup, managing the smells. So what are some ideas to support that? This was a bedroom where this particular young man, that's when he would become most incontinent, when he was at night in the bedroom. And so there, the idea of we put the floor drain in the vinyl with the Cove vinyl. We put a little box in there with a hot and cold water situation, a controller to the outside. So you're able to actually wash the bedroom out, squeegee it down the floor drain. So for Mom, this went from something that she was dealing with 2 hours every single day to where she was dealing with it for 30 minutes. And it's just a huge, huge difference. And it really kind of revolutionized, her life. And so once again, it's really thinking about how can the physical environment, support people that are providing the care, and recognizing that typical housing is not really built to deal with this sort of issue, but that there are modifications that make it possible. Electrical safety, again, high priority. What you're looking at here is a kind of an electrical box. So you think about a whole hard wall system where people might be testing the strength of materials. There may be a focus on the actual electrical box itself. And in most cases, there's just a couple of 8-penny nails that hold that box to the framing. In this case, this box mounts both to the face of the stud and to the side of the stud, and it has a little adjustment screw in it that allows you to bring the box out absolutely flush with the wall. And the advantage of that is it distributes all those stresses. So you can actually kick this electrical box and you won't break it free of the wall, and you don't end up with a big hole in the wall. And then you install in that the receptacle itself that's a tamper-proof receptacle. And the way it works is, unless there's 2 prongs on a cord, you can't stick anything in the box. So you can't stick a bobby pin or a screwdriver or anything in that electrical box and create a current unless you have a 2-pronged cord or a grounded cord that allows you to put the blade in and actually use the outlet. So now you've got the great box. What are you going to do for the cover plate? Cover plates, typical cover plates are really pretty soft materials. They're hard plastic. You hit them and they'll break. They make nylon ones that you can bend right in half. They'll put up with incredible impact. And in some cases, you can go to stainless steel, and then you can get the stainless steel powder coated so that it looks the same color as the wall. And it's always looking at how do you kind of make it look normal? How do you make it look like everybody else's house? How do you make it feel comfortable? How do you make it feel like a home? And stainless steel cover plates don't accomplish that. But ones that are the same color as the house and don't look any different than a regular cover plate just sort of disappear. And then you can actually install them with screws that you can't take out very easily. Similarly with lights, tamper-resistant lights that, I find that in the work, very few adults will take things apart. Most of the time when I've had to employ these sorts of strategies, it's for kids. And kids will take things apart. It's like they're interested in that. They seem to have that extra energy. And so those are the folks that I generally find messing around with the electrical outlets or getting up on a chair or a bed and trying to take the lights down or disassemble the fire alarm system. It's those kinds of curiosities that we've often used these strategies to deal with. And these are shatterproof polycarbonate lenses, very, very strong, and they look good. I mean, they don't look any different than a regular light situation. Touchless dimmers. Again, this is a situation we have used these in cases where they made sense for the person we were working with. It's about that person-centered planning nature. And in this case, the light dimmer itself is completely out of sight, and you can actually operate the light with your hand, moving over the area where the dimmer is placed, and it'll pick up your hand motion through a bunch of different materials, through sheetrock, through wood. So it's an invisible controller. Out of sight, out of mind is something that we've actually discovered a lot, and it made a lot of sense to us. Think back when I first began talking about, oftentimes people with autism, they react to environments. They don't necessarily go about creating those environments. And if something is just not there anymore, it's just not there anymore. And they won't necessarily go looking for it or even try to completely explain it. It's just, it was and now it's not. And so, this actually was a situation where we had a sink, and person loved that sink, and so part of the whole strategy for this individual was access to that sink at various times, and then you closed the compartment and the sink was gone. And that worked a lot. Kyle, who would break toilets when he had access to them, wouldn't go to the cupboard and open the toilet, where his dad had 4 toilets stored to replace the ones that got broken on a regular basis. So something to keep in mind, that it may work for you and for a particular person to just put things out of sight. Ingesting non-nutritive substances, sort of the classic definition of pica. We oftentimes find that individuals with autism spectrum disorder may have other co-occurring mental health and syndromes and behavioral issues. And pica is one that we encounter quite frequently. And in this case, Kyle would eat a mattress like that about every 6 months. And this was in spite of how hard his mom worked at putting various sheets and mattress covers tightly down over top of this mattress. He would manage to work his way through it and get into the mattress and dig those holes in it. So there's a technical solution, and you can see this product here to the side. We made a mattress cover. This is a product called ballistic nylon, and they actually make toys for gorillas out of that. It is an extremely durable material. You cannot poke a hole through it with a pair of scissors. You actually have to use pretty special sewing materials and machines to stitch it together. The nice thing about it is it has sufficient texture that the sheets will stay on it. So there are other waterproof fabrics out there that you can get that are pretty tough and you can put on a bed, but then you can never keep the sheets on it. The sheets pop loose and they slide off the bed, and then people are sleeping, right on the waterproof surfacing material. So this was a solution, and that's that same bed a year later. So we got a mattress that lasted a year, and to this day, Kyle's not made it through it. One of the major causes of out-of-home placement in the state of Washington spent a lot of time looking at who's coming into services, is leaving the family home, and there were 4 characteristics that they found. It was a diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder with co-occurring behavior. It was that people could only be kept safe when they were within line of sight or earshot. And it was that moms and dads wore out. That caregiver fatigue stood right up there with those other characteristics and most likely causing families to break down. So, if you have a child that doesn't sleep at night or gets up and wanders around the house or leaves the building, how do you manage that? And so there are all kinds of strategies out there. This is actually a commercially available bed that can be closed up at night, and the child can't get out of that bed. And there they are, and you understand why families will use them when moms and dads get worn down. But can we think beyond that? Can we think about the problem behavior once again? And is it the consequences? Is it really about the child getting up? Is it about Bernicia getting up and going into her brothers and sisters' room and maybe biting them? Is that really the problem? And can we think about this in a different way? Can we do this more humanely? And so environments that work should encourage people to explore and to discover. And I know that this isn't the most common characteristic, but if in the creation of these opportunities for people to exercise control, to live the lives that they want, this whole idea of making it possible for people to discover things, to respond to it differently. So this is a similar kind of a setting, but in this case, there's lots of interesting things going on in this bed. There are reasons why she would like to come here and would choose to come here in the day. And this notion that there was something interesting, so it was like, could a person choose to be in this situation and remain there because it was interesting enough to keep them engaged? So it's trying to find that point of balance between, supporting a person, doing what they want without unnecessarily restricting their freedom. And I think it requires judgment, and that's not legislatable, and oftentimes it's not about making a law. It's really about putting some tools in people's hands because they don't have other options. They can't think of what else they might do, and this helps create those opportunities for those different possibilities. So this is an ASD-friendly entertainment center. And once again, it's building on that idea of making things interesting, making things discoverable. So this is different than you might think of an entertainment center, which we generally imagine as television sets and CD players. In this case, these were all kinds of interactive ways of being involved with this entertainment center, different kinds of textures that could be changed over time. So all of these elements within this entertainment center, from the very beginning of its design, were meant to rotate. Were meant to have different things at different times so that people's interest remained active in using this particular entertainment center. So we're talking about flooring. Hardwood flooring is a pretty good choice. It's very durable. It looks really nice. I mean, when you walk into a house that has hardwood floors, it feels like home. They're pretty easy to take care of. You put good finishes on them. There's a lot of advantages to hardwood flooring. Flooring is one of the most difficult things to manage in housing, particularly if you have a number of people living together. This is a product called Connecto. It's a vinyl plank flooring, and as you can see in this little cutout up here, it has these two dual sticky surfaces that go together. And once they lock together, it creates a waterproof floor. But it doesn't look like vinyl. When you walk into a house with this down, it actually looks like a hardwood floor. And when I first started working with it, it fooled me pretty effectively. I mean, they have little blemishes in it and the whole 9 yards, and you get down on it and then you suddenly realize that it's vinyl. It floats freely, so it doesn't have to be nailed down. You seal it at the edge. It is a really good choice. And in a commercial grade, we've had it in houses where there's really significant cleanup that has to happen all the time, and it's held up over a number of years. Cork is a wonderful flooring material. It's soft. It's immediately warm. For people that spend much time down on the floor, it has a lot of great advantages. It's sustainable. There's no off-gassing with the cork product. If it has to be carpet, I mean, for some folks, bedroom just isn't bedroom unless there's carpet in it. Sometimes that can be accomplished with area rugs that are weighted on the edge and held down. This is a product made by a company called Flotex, and it looks like a carpet with a crew cut. It is textured and there is a softness to it, but it is incredibly durable. And if you can, I've seen them get literally roofing tar on them, and it can be removed with a scraper, and they come right back to life. And if they get wet, they're not slippery. So they're an option. Some of these can actually be purchased with antimicrobial backings on them, so that it deals with some of the smells and some of the organics that might grow on conventional carpet. Tile. In warmer environments, tile is really a great choice. If you get into colder environments, unless you're going to heat that floor, it can be a little off-putting. It's extremely durable. It's pretty unbreakable, but it's also kind of sort of unfriendly in some ways in terms of its hardness. This is a product we've used a number of times. You'll see this sometimes in like aerobic studios and gymnasiums of one kind or another, and it is a vinyl flooring product, in this case looking like wood, but then it has a ½ an inch of high density, high impact resistant foam on the back of it. So it's a resilient flooring. We've used this in situations where people have fall seizures, and it's got a nice resilience to it and very cleanable. It doesn't give you the 100% waterproofing because the seams are a little bit difficult to deal with, but it can be an option, and we're actually speccing it on a project right now in New York. Running away or wandering, it's the second thing that parents say, what are your greatest concerns? That their child is going to hurt themselves or hurt someone else, and their second one is they're going to wander away and be lost or be hurt in the community. The number one cause of death, people with autism spectrum disorder, is drowning. Oftentimes that attraction to water will draw them to the swimming pool, draw them to the lake, draw them to the river, and bad things can happen. So some of the strategies we've worked on is to try to create distractions that find things that are interesting. We call it layers of freedom, places of control. So that it's really about what does a person want to do when they get outside? Can you put things in place that really encourages them to do this or that rather than running away? We did one situation where we actually had an irrigation system that when you got 5 feet from the gate, the irrigation system would come on. And you could go to the gate and open up and leave, but you were going to get wet on the way. And for some folks that was great. For other folks, they just chose that wasn't the greatest idea. Early on, again, working with kids, you can sometimes make it a two-process situation at a gate or a latching system that takes 2 things to do in order to be able to leave. But as time goes on, people figure those out, and they don't necessarily work so well. This is a no-climb fence. So you can see this big PVC pipe up here, and it's mounted on the top of this fence. And if you jump up and grab a hold of the pipe, there's just nothing to get a hold of, and you just end up slipping back off the pipe. This is really a challenge in neighborhoods because the code doesn't allow you to build fences over 6 foot tall in neighborhoods. So it's really difficult if you have somebody that's going to scale the fence and take off. You can put all the framing on the outside, and that helps. A trick that we've been very successful with is you can do sports fences around basketball courts and so forth. And they're a much lighter framed fence, and they can be up to 17 feet tall and can be really pretty effective. And because everybody understands that you need a fence like that if you're going to bat a tennis ball in the backyard or you have a basketball going on, you can really kind of get away with it. But it's just strategies, once again, for helping create an environment where people can stay in the yard. This gets into this whole generation of monitoring of one kind or another. And there's more and more technology developing that's becoming increasingly sophisticated. I mean, all of us walk around with cell phones that are locating devices. But this is back to this whole question of what do we need to know? Are cameras the best way? I mean, I don't think it's much objection when people use cameras and keeping an eye on children or infants. But as people become adults, you have to ask yourself the question, what is it that the camera can tell me that I need to know? And is there another way for me to find it out? And I think that all of us need to be sensitive to the fact that I don't want to live with a camera on me all the time. And I don't think anybody else does either. But yet I understand the need and the responsibility of keeping people safe. So is there a way of finding some devices that really make that happen? This is slowing them down. These are delayed egress systems. We've used them in a number of different occasions. So it's not that the building is completely secured, but it is a way that when a person gets to a door, gets to an exit, there is an alarm, there is time for moms or dads or supports to respond. This is a new system. We actually had a conversation about this. These are, again, locating devices. These are monitored systems. You pay a fee, and it's a way of staying in touch, both from a communication standpoint, from a GPS standpoint. If you actually call this website, there's somebody who will come on and talk to you about this. And these are families that are really struggling with this issue of keeping their kids safe without this whole lockdown kind of an idea. And these are some strategies that are coming forward to deal with that. But again, I think it's about judgment. This is a real simple lock system, as you see in hotels, and this particular one has a siren on it so that when the door is opened, the family is alerted. So we're back to what we started with at the beginning of this session, which are these principles that I hope we've shown you examples today of entering into a relationship that's good or bad and how creating opportunity can improve that situation. We've begun to take things apart that are problem behaviors and really figure out what the issue is, and are there things that can be done with the physical environment to shift that conversation, to eliminate those negative consequences. That you can't fix a problem behavior in a broken environment, and I think we've made a good case for that. And if it doesn't work, if the environment doesn't work for a person, it's not their fault. And finally, what is a supportive environment? And what are the opportunities that we're trying to create? And it's increasing an individual's choice and independence, enabling them to do the things that they want, giving them control as they build capacity, keep them safe, and reduce your stress. If the stress comes down in a household, everything changes. Everything changes. And enable people to live the way, their life that satisfies them. So thank you very much for attending today, and we'll see you for the next session.